Good evening and welcome to 30 Days, 30 Tips, second series. And tonight I'm going to talk to you very briefly about issuing statements of attainment. And this topic comes to you courtesy of an inquiry that came through the RTO Doctor website this morning. And I must say that it's getting to the point sometimes where I think I should start invoicing ASQA for being their info line, because we, on average at RTO Doctor, we probably get about six to eight inquiries every week about interpretation of the standards and what does this mean, and do I really have to do the LLN unit? Do I really have to do the TAE 40116 now? Otherwise I won't be employable. What does this clause mean? What does this mean under the AQF? What does the VQF incorporate? And my boss said this. And it really is quite interesting to listen to, because I'm sure that some of these people do actually go to ASQA and they don't get the information that they are actually looking for. In fact, they probably get the standard, please put it in an email, or we'll refer your question on to the next person, and they don't actually get their answer. And so because it's a burning question and they need the answer right there and then, usually they go to the next best thing, and often that is RTO Doctor, and we always get it through the website or via a phone call. And so today's came about because there was an RTO in the eastern states, and they had a student who was enrolled in a Certificate 3 in hospitality. And one of the students was demanding a statement of attainment be issued to them for a coffee unit so that they could get employment. And they were demanding that that statement of attainment be issued within the 30 days of the assessment being completed. And because that was well and truly completed, they were saying that the RTO was in breach of the standards. And so I thought we'd take a closer look at what the standards mean. And it really is a little bit open to interpretation. And so I just want to take you through it a little bit. The issues come around the terms AQF certification and how it's used, and training product and how that's used in relation to these clauses. So if we have a look at clause 3.1, it very specifically states that the RTO issues AQF certification documentation only when the learner has been assessed as meeting the requirements of the training product as specified in the relevant training package. So in accordance with 3.1, the student believed that they were entitled to receive a statement of attainment because they had completed the requirements of the training package. They'd been deemed competent in the coffee unit. Now, what we do also know was that the coffee unit was not the only unit that they were actually enrolled in. They were actually enrolled in a full qualification, and so they're saying, yes, I understand that, but this is in partial completion of a qualification. And so if you look to the standards for clarification on the issue, you're probably not going to find it there, because it quite clearly refers to, under clause 3.1, the RTO issues AQF certification. Now that could be a statement of attainment, it could be a testament, it could be a record of results. Nonetheless, it is a formal document. Then we go down to clause 3.3, for example, and we get a bit more clarification. And this is where the 30 calendar days comes in. And it says AQF certification documentation is issued to a learner within 30 calendar days of the learner being assessed as meeting the requirements of the training product, if the training program in which the learner is enrolled is complete. So we have a little bit more clarity there around the full qualification being the training program, but the training product might be the unit of competency for the coffee unit, for example. Now it goes on to say, and providing all agreed fees the learner owes to the RTO have been paid. So what that implies is that if somebody wanted the coffee unit as part of an enrolment in a Certificate 3 in hospitality, for example, then it could be interpreted that the student would be entitled to request a statement of attainment as part of the AQF certification documentation within 30 calendar days of being assessed as meeting the requirements of the coffee unit if the training program in which the learner is enrolled is complete. The program's not complete, so they're not going to get a testament, but what they would, according to this, if you interpret it in the same way that the student is, they would be entitled to receive a statement of attainment in partial completion of the full qualification, because they haven't completed the qualification and they want to apply for a job and they require that coffee unit so that they can get that job. And they've paid all their fees, so there's nothing holding them back. And the RTO quite rightly says, well, we don't have to issue a statement of attainment just because a student comes in and says, I haven't finished my qualification, I want to stay enrolled, I've paid all my fees, I just want to get a job, can I get a statement of attainment to show that I've got the coffee unit? And if you have a look at the user's guide to the standards, now bearing in mind that the clauses we just discussed are actually legislative requirements. The user's guide, however, is not auditable, and it's not something that you can use as a guide for legislative interpretation. It's there as a user's guide, and in fact ASQA even have a little disclaimer on the user's guide saying that you can't use it to rely on for legal advice. But what we can see in the user's guide is a clarification around this particular issue. And it's not a very good clarification, but it is one nonetheless. It says, when issuing certification, issue in a timely manner. AQF certification documentation must be issued within 30 calendar days of the learner's final assessment being completed or their existing course. Now, the assessment has been completed, as we said, they were deemed competent, and therefore, based on this, providing all fees have been paid, and they had been, so your learners can provide proof of their competence to employers or potential employers and obtain any industry licenses or accreditation. So this clarification, if you like, seems to support the student's request for a statement of attainment as part of the AQF certification, because they've completed the unit, they're trying to get it for the purposes of employment, it's part of their existing course, their fees have been paid, there's no reason why, in the student's mind, they shouldn't receive this statement of attainment. However, you go down a little bit further in the user's guide and it says, you are only required to issue AQF certification documentation when a learner has completed their program of training and assessment with your RTO. You are not required to issue interim documentation at any time. So that would suggest that if you read that the way I'm interpreting it, you are not required to issue the student with a statement of attainment, despite how the student could have perceived everything that had been written so far. So it seems to me that this is another area where the standards and the legislation is not as clear as it should be. It's not as transparent for RTOs, it's not as transparent for students, it's just not transparent. And again, this is one of those areas where it probably needs to be picked up and clarified more clearly for everyone involved. I personally suggested to this particular person that it's entirely up to them if they want to issue a statement of attainment, but it wouldn't be appropriate because they're not cancelling their enrolment, they're remaining in the course. While it is in partial completion, what RTOs usually do in those circumstances is issue an interim progress report or a record of results so far, that sort of thing, but they don't issue a statement of attainment. And in fact, usually if they wanted to, if the student insisted on receiving a statement of attainment as opposed to a progress report, for example, then the RTO would probably be within their rights, I would imagine, to charge for that statement of attainment, because it's not a requirement of the course. The students remaining enrolled, it is in partial completion, yes, but they're electing to have a statement of attainment as opposed to having a progress report for free. So again, this is something that you would clarify in your own internal policies and procedures as well, particularly around fees and charges, because it also depends on things like the pre-enrollment information and the contractual arrangements that were in place with the student. It also depends on things like the training and assessment strategy and processes, and how you're going about that, whether the student did actually complete the unit or whether it's in partial completion of that unit. In this particular case, the student had completed the unit and they had been deemed competent in that unit. They were only part way through their qualification though. And it's interesting if you look at that in a little bit more fine print too, because when you enroll a student in a qualification, you're also actually enrolling them in individual units, particularly if they're on a training contract. So that just brings in a whole other level of complexity. In this particular case, I don't believe the student was enrolled in a training contract. I do believe that the employer was wanting to see a statement of attainment because they were going to be enrolled in a training contract. So there's a whole range of other areas that would come into this, but on this particular occasion, I would confidently say that the legislation and the standards need to be further clarified to make life simpler for RTOs, but also consumers, so that they know what they're entitled to receive at any particular time. And it's not incumbent on the RTO only to make that clarification. The standards actually need to be very clear. I think in this case it's fair to say that the student is eligible to receive a progress report or an interim results type thing, but the requirement is not there, in my opinion, to issue a statement of attainment on the grounds that were presented to me. I hope that's been helpful for you this evening. And once again, just a quick reminder that the feedback closes for the review of the NVR Act tomorrow, Friday the 18th of August 2017. And we really do encourage you to get your feedback in. And this might be one of those areas, again, where you say, you know what, this actually does need to be reviewed and clarified further as part of all of the legislation that falls under the NVR Act. Thank you very much for following us, and I look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. Bye for now.